Hi, this is Brian Hinde coming from the Columbia River Gorge out of my shop. I've been building watercraft for quite a while. Surfboards since 1968, sailboards from 76, kiteboards from 97, and stand-ups since 06. So I've been drawing pictures, looking at this form of art for quite a long time. And I get many people coming into the shop that are getting, I don't know what you want to call it, mixed up, have a different theory they're looking at, and especially when it comes to volume. So I put in these series of 5 videos together on YouTube to sort of get some basic information out that will maybe make things easier for you and move us into the right direction and make you finding the product you're looking for in the easiest way possible. You know, volume, what is it? It's basically buoyancy is what we're talking about. And how does buoyancy or volume work when it's talking sailboards? People are going out there and, you know, they're getting hammered out of control, and you got to look at what's making that. It's simple, rough water. You have 2 energy sources, you and the swell or the chop, and when those 2 energy sources collide, there's got to be an action what's happening. Usually you get bounced around. So I think we should look at the first 3 types of watercraft that actually exist out there. There's displacement hulls like a battleship or the Queen Mary. There's subs, which have drag on all 4 sides. And there's a planing craft like sailboards, surfboards, water skis, jet skis, kiteboards. They're planing craft made to design and act different because we're on top of the water in windsurfing, and the displacement hull is inside the water. I think this is where part of the misunderstanding of what people think volume really does. The best way to really describe, you know, is Bernoulli. Bernoulli has a principle of flight. He has theories on a lot of different things, and basically what we were talking here is a lot of his theories, my theories possibly. I've learned over the years what actually I believe works and how I design my craft. But an airplane wing sets what we call an angle of incidence. It has a little angle to the parallel fuselage. There's a high pressure and a low pressure. Low pressure is traveling faster than a high pressure. In windsurfing, we're only dealing in high pressure. So we don't have wind going over the top of us creating a low pressure lift. We're only dealing in a high pressure. Now Bernoulli's theory of plane, let me grab my prop here, is pretty easily, this is a surfboard, we're setting that when you're standing on a board at what basically is the angle of incidence. As you move across the water, water strikes all points at the same time. If you were sitting in a swimming pool when you were a kid and you put your hand out and you went like this, you could splash somebody. Well, at the same time, this is setting at the same angle as you move forward. X amount of water is going forward. Bernoulli calls that your forward stream. Nowadays, you can call it a bow wave. At the same time, water comes underneath your board, creating your laminar flow and your weighted surface drag and lift from reflected pressure. Between this flow and this flow, there's water trapped, which Bernoulli calls a pressure band. This pressure band creates 85% of the lift when he does those mathematical equations. So you have to ride up on that. Once you ride up on there, then you're dealing on a reflective pressure. You trim out. You're moving fast enough to create enough lift to support the sailor's weight, the rig, and the board. So that's Bernoulli's basic principle of how you come to plane and what exactly is happening. Let me check my notes here. Really easy, simple. I tell people to look out when they leave the shop here as you drive off, roll down your window, put your hand out. As you go faster and faster, your hand starts to lift. If you go fast enough, it starts to lose control. If you automatically do this, you have control. Narrow board, wide board. Now, if I took a block of foam and I stuck it behind my hand and put it out the window, you're not going to find anything really going on. Really, if you look at it as a scientist, it's actually helped to control because the foam weighs something. It gives you more control due to the weight. So, wide board, narrow board, same volume of hand. Now, if you were the best windsurfer in the world, you hit a big, huge choppy area, and you could jump your board up on a rail and ride through there, the ride would be completely smooth. You'd be cutting through the chop. Same volume of board. Wide board, narrow board. Now, I think where the theory is getting mixed up is when it comes to displacement hulls. Let's look at the Queen Mary. She's cutting through the ocean. She's displacing water. But all of a sudden the captain says, there is a lot of radical big swells, winds coming up, it's going to get really rough. Let's take off some ballast. Ballast adds water, lowers the water line. Anything higher up is going to rock a little more. As you lower it, you're going to get less rocking, but something else has taken place. You've added weight. Weight has more kinetic energy and more inertia. Keeps the boat from doing this. So what happens overall, you get a better ride for the customer. So I think that's where they mixed up. You think that there's more volume when you lower your water line due to less volume, that you're going to get a better ride. But stability in any watercraft is width. Now, I got certified about 15 years ago in scuba diving, and I learned something. It was really important how I could start using some stuff that could measure what volume really does and how to look at it. And I think that's part of the problem. Everybody's looking at a measuring device to what, I'm getting blasted out there. I'm going to go to this size of board. Well, let's look at a thing called positive, neutral, and negative buoyancy. Now, if you had a liter of foam and I had a kilo, and this is water, and I put the liter of foam there, and I added a kilo, the liter of foam is going to set right down to what they call neutral buoyancy. If I added a pound more on it, it would be a negative 1 pound buoyancy. If I took the kilo off and left a pound on it, I'd have a positive 1 pound buoyancy. Now look at me, I'm about 170 pounds. I can ride a 70-liter board. And 70 times 2, we're dropping off to 0.2 because a kilo is 2.2. We're dropping off to 0.2, and that covers the weight of the board and the rig's weight. So you go 70 times 2 is 140. So a 140-liter person would be at perfect neutral buoyancy. I'm 170. I'm a negative 30. But I can slog around on this okay. And it seems to work quite well. I don't have to sacrifice a lot of energy trying to, milk every little nanute out of it because it's not floating me properly. So we find up here in the gorge, at least I have over the years, that most people in the gorge ride in high winds between a negative 10 and a negative 30. A small gal who is riding the same board at 100 pounds, she's a plus 40. At the same time, a gentleman that's weighing 220, if he's on a 100-liter board, he's still a negative 20. So this really makes a giant difference on coming to playing and what it's all about. I had a couple about, God, it's been a dozen years, I guess, come in and order boards. He was 220 pounds. She was 110, half his weight. I made her a 20 and a half 12-inch tail. That's measured 1 foot up. I made him a 24-inch wide 100-liter with a 15-inch tail. Her whole windsurfing experience in high wind is I'm getting my ass handed to me. She never says I can't plane. At the same time, him being 220 pounds, twice her weight, his whole life of windsurfing is I ain't playing, I can't play, and I'm not having fun. But when it really blows, he's never out of control. The majority of the time, he is really happy with all that lift he's getting. To see how different each of their windsurfing worlds is, if you took her board and doubled the width, because he is twice her weight, and gave him a 41-inch wide board, he'd be screaming, I'm getting my ass handed to me. Now you took his board and divided it in half because she's half his weight and gave her a 12-inch wide board, she'd be struggling saying, I can't plane. This is how difference between the light and the heavy person, and it's so different, it's unbelievable. Now, there's another way that you can measure. I came up with a system of measuring lift. You know, what we're doing, we're creating dynamic lift, driving across the top of this water, bending out water, due to the density of water, we come to plane and we've actually defying gravity as long as we're moving. Now, if you took the width of a board and you divided that into the sailor's weight, you come out with a number. Now, if you took a late sailor, a small person, that number is really small. You take a big person, it's really big. Sometimes the small sailor is creating half. The lift that's needed is half as what it is over here with the big sailor. So there's a way that you can actually look by just dividing numbers, come up with a set of numbers. The big guy might be having 9 pounds of lineal inch of the width of the board. If it's 21, you just divide it. And at the same time, a small person is she only needs 5 pounds. She's developing 5 pounds of lift per inch. He's needs to develop 9. So there's a giant difference. But you can start doing a little of these equations in your head when you go to the shop. Same with the tail width. If it's a 15 versus a 12, do the 12 into your weight. You'll come up with a number. You'll say, well, that's what I'm used to. At the same time, with the positive, neutral, and negative buoyancy, you know that a 90-liter board is your comfort range. When you get below that, you struggle. Well, start looking for a board. If you're looking for a high wind, it's got 90 liters, and at the same time, the width range is equal to what you're used to or where you want to go. If you're riding a 15-inch tail and you're getting out of control, then you need to go to a narrower board and a narrower tail. So, I mean, there's one of the things that I come up with a way to look at. Everybody is experienced tail walking. I mean, that's the point. You get going so fast, you need only X amount of board in the water to create amount of lift to keep you on plane. Now, up here in the gorge for many, many years, the boards were narrow. Nowadays, the tails are wider, the boards are wider, and it's a lot easier to tail walk. The wider the board, the wider the tail, the sooner the tail walk. It happens at a lower RPM, because the simple fact is you only have your weight and your talent to keep that board in the water. At the same time, when you're tail walking, air is compressing around the front half of the board that's out of the water. So I came up with a way to look at it is, if you only need 100 square inches of wetted surface on the bottom of the board at 170 pounds in 4-2 conditions, if you have a wider board and a wider tail, that might be that far from the tail. Now, if it's a narrower board, it might be that far. There's way more board in the water. And the easy way to look at that of a narrower board with longer, it's the same amount of wetted surface. Okay? But at the same time, it's creating the same amount of lift, but you have more board out of the water, and you start doing this. You're out of control. You can't control it because you expended all your ability, and all your weight isn't controlling your board, so the only solution is slow down. Now, a dragster has wheels way out in front, super long, and that's for high-speed stability. A little Volkswagen Bug, that's wheels are about this far apart. If you put 1,000 horsepower in it and want to do 300 miles an hour on a dragster, it'd be pretty damn scary. You blink and you'd be rolling. So if you have less wetted surface in the board, creating the ample amount of lift, is the Volkswagen. A board that is more wetted surface is the dragster, because it has more board, it have more directional stability. But all of them still have the same amount of drag, 100 square inches of wetted surface. So you're not going to go any faster unless you have a control. So it's any board, a narrow board, a wide board, you're going to hit a point where you cannot control it anymore, because it's just creating so much lift, and you don't have the physical ability to keep it down. Now, how do you, in the next 4 videos, we're going to try to tie all this together. Now remember, out of this video, basically what I'm saying is you slog the volume and you ride the width. Remember the hand at the window. Remember how to calculate your volume, positive, neutral, negative buoyancy. It gives you a scale to start looking at where you're at in each of your boards. At the same time, divide the width of the board into your weight. It'll give you a number. If you have a 21-inch wide board versus a 25-inch wide board, they're going to be different numbers. Start looking. This is a way to measure volume that's going to, where you can feel what it's actually doing. You know, you have a number to calculate with. You can line up numbers out of all your boards and say, yes, it does make sense. So, appreciate it. Remember, you slog the volume, you ride the width. I thank you for your time.